Alright, hello and welcome to the Devstream 108 Breakdown. So today we got a decent amount of information and we got a lot to speculate on. So this video is going to be talking a whole lot about the potential of systems and things that they talked about, more so than just touching on what they touched on, because there's not a whole lot of substance there on the surface. I think it's much more interesting to look a little bit beyond that at the potential for the things that they discussed. So first and foremost, we have the Spider Mechs. So the Spider Mechs were shown, unfortunately they were shown at level 500 because their level could not be changed since they're very much work in progress. But we found out that these guys have all a cloaking mechanism, so they're going to be able to be partially invisible a la like Halo 3 or like the Predator. So you're going to have to knock them out of their invisibility to get more of like a sight of them, I suppose, which will make them more interesting to fight. And I wonder if they will be more of an ambush type enemy rather than the type of enemy like we have most in the game, which are enemies that just run at you. So I think that'll be really cool. And I wonder if the invisibility tech that they were showing is actually going to be not reversed, but applied to the enemies that we currently have that go invisible, which is just capture targets. That would definitely make capture targets that go invisible a bit less of just like a weird waiting game, because you have no real way to know where they are. Regardless, I'm really excited for the Spider Mechs. I think that they're going to be a really cool addition to the game and definitely what the Corpus faction need, because they're super unique enemies that are like Hyena and like Zanuka. And of course, those enemies I just mentioned are usually bosses, so we don't see them as often as we would probably like to. With that, moving on, we got to talk about a very, very broad subject, which is melee changes and why we're not getting them and the reasons around that. So, obviously, we got primary, we got secondary, and we got beam changes, and those all went over, on the whole, incredibly well. I think there are still a couple of weak weapons mixed in there, at MRs they probably shouldn't be at, but on the whole, a massive improvement just overall to the game. Putting weapons on like an MR curve of power makes things a lot more consistent, and all that business is fantastic. Melee, however, they want to do more radical changes to. And when I say more radical changes, based on what they said on the Devstream, I could tell you right now, it seems like DE definitely understands what is good about Melee at current. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But the reason we're not getting these Melee changes anytime soon is because they can't dedicate the amount of people that they would need to completely overhaul this system and give it a big full rework like it deserves, basically. With that, I want to talk about some things that they said, and that is that originally the design intention of where Melee was going was more in a like Devil May Cry type route where you would have very focused stance-based attacks where you're focusing on one enemy at a time. Turns out that Warframe is not a game where you're focusing on one enemy at a time, and it is much less like Devil May Cry and much more like a Dynasty Warriors style game. And it seemed like the devs understood that the strength of Warframe at current in its melee system is that it is Dynasty Warriors-like, because that is very fun to a wide amount of people. So with that, I would offer the suggestion that when they do the melee rework, they should press harder on the Dynasty Warrior-like system that they have. In that, if they wanted to go the route of doing a balance pass, and then instead of changing what stances we have now, because I think the moves and the way stances work right now is really good and cool and gives you just enough variety in what you're doing and really cool animations to appreciate it, adding on to stances a super. So in Dynasty Warriors, for those of you that are not familiar, you are like killing a bunch of dudes with basic attacks and building up this big Muso meter. Whenever you have that full, you can do a gigantic, explosive, wide-ranging, huge, explosive attack. If Warframe took that and then applied a super to each of the stances that we have, I think that would be a really good way for us to get two things. One, a much like a property of stances that could be more appealing, like if a weapon has a much better super but the base like stance moves are not as good, there's like a balancing thing you can do there where maybe stances that are not like used very much get a really powerful super, and ones that are already really good get a super that is just okay. There's some balancing stuff that they can do with that. And then beyond that, that is an opportunity for the animation guys, I don't know if this is probably appealing, but I would assume it is for the animation team, to go hog wild with like canned animations for your Warframes with the certain weapons where they just go absolutely nuts and it's just a giant AoE, like, great attack. And because the animation would be canned and you wouldn't be able to do it while moving, it could add some really, really good style to melee, which is there in certain stances, but not in others at current. So that's just my take on like melee changes way in the future. Obviously, that stuff's not going to happen anytime soon because they don't have the people for it. But I hope that we see something like that because I think it would be a huge step forward for the game and would be really cool. But obviously, there are a million ways to go with melee that I think would be totally acceptable. And if you guys have ideas for that, I think that'd be interesting to see in the comments. But besides that, let's talk about Void Onslaught. So Void Onslaught is the renamed new Dark Sector mode that now has nothing to do with the Dark Sectors, which are going to remain how they are, and Void Onslaught is its own thing now. So it's a bit of a pickle in terms of explaining this at this point. So with that, these are going to be your weekly, randomly generated kind of dungeons where you are getting a score based on your progression, and it's on a timer. You're going to be going through, and it's going to be a bunch of combat challenges where you need to kill these 4 enemies, and you get more points for killing all the other enemies that are around you and killing everything that's in your way. So it's basically a gigantic murder fest, which is, like, given a good spawn rate, which on stream it seemed the spawn rate was fantastic, would be a hell of a lot of fun. With that, and this is a quote directly from Steve, it will have compelling and interesting unique rewards. Which it's very descriptive saying that. And then later, Rebecca mentioned that it might have focus rewards. And that's fine. That it's a very strange thing. Because the rewards are so important to a mode like this, to getting, because if it's fun, that's great. If it's fun and there are other fun things that are rewarding, it will never get played. So this needs to have the rewarding bit, but based on what they showed, they have the fun bit down, so as long as they can apply long-term rewards to it, it'll be fucking dope. And also there's going to be a competitive aspect to this, which is going to have some like weekly leaderboards and things, which might also be cool, but will probably be subject to massive cheese if I had to take any kind of guess. So hopefully the leaderboard aspect isn't the important reward bit. Otherwise, it'll probably get to a meta that is very not fun very, very quickly, but I hope not. Anyway, there's that, and that's cool. I hope that mode goes wonderfully. I think the changes that we saw just from the last time it was shown to now make it a whole lot less passive, which I really, really like. Because before it was like a glorified like multi-point defense, which would be super lame if they had implemented it that way. I very much appreciate the changes that we've seen just from that dev stream to this one. And then next to finally, as I did not note the final thing we're going to talk about, we have Logins 2.0. Obviously, people want this so that they can get these rewards in the order that they actually want them and not like getting a glyph and like being forced into the next reward and getting those things that are 800 days in earlier. Basically, this was given an eventually. Whenever there are like a couple programmers freed up and like an art guy to put all this business together, it'll get put together, but basically it's like a side back burner type project that we will see eventually. It is in the works, but doesn't really seem like a massive priority right now, which I know is really unfortunate, but I can understand why it would be that way, and I'm honestly just, I'm happy waiting for it, like as long as it's good when it comes out and it solves like a lot of the major problems that the login system has, it's totally fine. Beyond that, we have one final thing to talk about, and that is Endless Kuva. So, Endless Kuva was shown, and what it basically boils down to is you are going to go to the Kuva Fortress, you are going to start the survival, and then, whenever you get the oxygen tanks that are going to drop into the mission, there will be specific enemies you can kill to get a Kuva filter, and then you're going to put that Kuva filter on the oxygen tank and defend it, and then it will explode into Kuva. So, or, well, you will collect the Kuva that it collects, basically. It seems like a relatively simple, effective solution to having Endless Kuva, which I can very much appreciate. The number one problem that was seen very much by the chat is that the Kuva that was collected was only 50 in amount, and it was said a million billion times that that is a placeholder amount. However, I would like to offer a suggestion for how much Kuva it should be. And this is... And it's, how do I put this? It is an amount that is very rewarding to the people that are underserved in the community right now, which is the small amount of people that want to do hours of survival. And what I mean by that is if you scale the Kuva reward to be enemy level times 10, as in the enemy level of the mission, which increases the longer you go in survival, times 10, and then put a cap on that where the cap is, say, 100. Like, the enemy after enemy level 100, it no longer rises, so every, like, filter you get, you'd be getting 1,000 Kuva, which obviously at enemy level 100, that's very, very good. I think that could be very, very good, just in general, for, like, giving people a reason to go, like, an hour into a survival, and then to stay there for a little bit to keep getting that very good reward at the end. I think that is maybe a controversial way to do the rewards, because I know there's a lot of people that don't have that kind of time to put into an endless Kuva thing, but also those people can just do regular Kuva missions, and I think that that would be fine as well. It's weird, because I personally would like to see this mission be successful, but the rewards have to be high enough, but the rewards can't be fully endless scaling to encourage people to go like 10 hours in survival, because that's not a realistic amount of time that I think you can ask a player to play, and is very, very anti-casual player. So putting a cap on it where, like, say an hour in, enemies are level 100, and that's where it stops scaling, I think would be really healthy, just to not alienate people that don't have 4 hours to spend in a fucking survival mission. Anyway, that is the Devstream. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I totally forgot, just because I was so into explaining all this stuff, to show this dope artwork of the Void Onslaught mode that they showed. It's very cool. I appreciate it, and that's neat. Also, for those of you that did not see Primetime or the very end of the Devstream, they're making a new minigame, which is a fighting game. I don't have a whole lot to say about this, other than that seems dope. And also, given enough, like, time and polish, I think it's hilarious that this could absolutely be just straight up better than Conclave. I think that is super funny. So yeah, that's going to do it for the Devstream 108 breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you tomorrow, or tonight, because I am streaming tonight. Later, everyone.